Welcome to NLPCraft video tutorials. Apache NLPCraft is a Java-based open source library for adding natural language interface to modern applications, enabling people to interact with your products using voice or text. In this quick video, we'll cover the NLPCraft command line utility. NLPCraft command line utility, or CLI for short, is a central management utility for NLPCraft that supports interactive REPL and command line modes. Most of the functions the script does can be done through running Java applications or using NLPCraft REST API. Yet, using this script, you can perform the same task much simpler and quicker. From starting and managing REST server and data props, running various built-in tools, to testing models via REST API, NLPCraft CLI provides a single centralized utility that makes a quick work out of these routine tasks. Note that NLPCraft CLI is only available in either official Apache, source zip, or in binary zip distributions. If you used Maven or similar build tools to add NLPCraft to your project as a dependency, NLPCraft CLIs will not be available out of the box, and you will need to download zip distributions separately. The NLPCraft CLI script is located in the bin subfolder of installation root and is available as NLPCraft shell for Unix, Linux, and Mac OS, and NLPCraft CMD for Windows environments. Both versions provide identical functionality. The NLPCraft CLI works in two modes: command line mode, where it executes a single command at a time, and interactive REPL mode. NLP CLI starts in REPL mode by default. All the functionality and command syntax remain the same regardless of whether command is executed from a command line or in REPL mode. So let's go ahead and get started. We're in Windows 10, and let's go ahead and start NLPCraft CLI. As I mentioned before, by default, without any arguments, it starts in the REPL mode. There's a couple of things to mention at the beginning. First of all, you can always use several commands for auto completion in history. If you click Tab in any point of time, you're going to get an auto completion and help for a variety of different commands parameters, model IDs, elements IDs, or class path, or file system path. So it's very convenient. At any point of time, you can click Tab to get help. You can also use up and down arrows to scroll to history of commands. So for example, if you use help command, you can basically just tap arrow up and arrow down to see the history of commands. Now, since we're in the help command, this is something you're going to use quite often in the beginning. So when you type just help, like I just did, you get basically a laundry list of all the commands that are available in NLPCraft CLI. You can also ask help all, and you get an extended long version of each and every command. It's a very long scroll out. So typically you wouldn't do it, but you can basically see all the commands with all the extensive documentation that NLPCraft CLI provides. You can also basically ask for a command or for help for a specific command. By basically saying something like this. We're going to use two commands here, no log and once. And you can get a help for just a specific command by doing that. Let's take a look at some of the most frequently used commands. Look at a start server command. And just to see that NLPCraft CLI works across operating systems, we're going to switch to Ubuntu, and I have Ubuntu here running on WSL2. It also has the NLPCraft installed. I'm going to head and start NLPCraft CLI the same way, and we're going to work on start server command. As you can see, I can use the auto completion for most of my operations. And start server has a bunch of parameters, but all of them optional. So we can basically just go ahead and start the server, and it will basically takes about 20 seconds to start, and we can see it prints out a pretty extensive log. It shows you actually the log of the server and Ignite configurations if they're not default ones, and the full command line that you can basically take a look what's being started. Essentially, you can start yourself the server by supplying this long command line to start the server with all these parameters, or you can just use NLPCraft CLI to do it. So it started, and it prints out a pretty long and extensive log about its configuration. You can get the same information again by basically just typing info. You get pretty much the same. If you would have a prop, you would have a prop information as well. You can also basically just say info server. It will print out exactly the same information. And the one thing we didn't discuss in the beginning is the prompt line. As you can see over here, the prompt line for every command in the NLPCraft CLI has 4 portions or 4 parameters. The first one is the status of the server, and it basically says server on or server off. Since we've just started the server, it says server on. It has exactly the same status line for the data prop. So NLPCraft CLI supports one local server and one local prop on your local installation. So right now the prop is off. We're going to start in a second. It also shows you access token. That's actually used in any REST calls with the NLPCraft REST API. And when you start the server through NLPCraft CLI, it automatically signs in with the default user. You obviously can sign out and sign in with any user you like, but for the basic testing, for the basic kind of up and go, it's a very convenient feature of basically automatically signing in order to have the sign-in token that you can use. And it shows you a current folder in which you're operating. So let's go ahead and start the prop. Let's take a look at help, and it's going to be start the prop. And now for the starter prop, we need to specify a couple of more parameters, and at least one of them is not optional. We need to specify the path to where the models are located, and we need to specify model IDs. So let's go ahead and start a prop, and we need to specify the class path. And here I can use, I'm going to use a light switch example just to start, and I know it's located in, and look how convenient I can basically do the auto completion of the path. And what's actually even more convenient is that once I've specified the path, NLPCraft will automatically scan this path and give me all the models available in this path. I don't have to remember the class names because I need to specify a fully qualified class name for it. So I'm going to pick a Scala model, and we'll go ahead and start the prop. So the prop starts in a very similar way as the server. It starts much quicker. And now we have essentially a fully wired up system. We have a REST server we started up, and we have a data prop with our model that we've just started. So essentially at this point, you've kind of, learned the two major commands, to start the server and start the prop. Anyways, you can essentially restart the prop if you want to just restart the prop. Let's say you've changed the code, you want to restart the prop. You can restart the prop with simple restart prop command. You don't have to type it again, all this long line of commands. Now, this command is only available in REPL mode, obviously, because in the REPL mode, you keep data in the session of the REPL mode. You can also do the, again, info command just to see status of everything, and you can see now status of a server as before, and now you can see status of local prop. Again, all this information. Now, the command that you would likely use most of the time is test model. This command doesn't require you to have the prop started. It essentially starts in the embedded prop and runs the automatic model validator that is based on intent sample annotations that you have in your code. So let's go ahead and stop the prop. We don't need this anymore. And we're going to use the test model command. Now, this command requires the class path, and we're going to use exactly the same class path we used before in examples. We're going to use a light switch for now. It's a target classes. And we need to specify list of models. And for now, we're just going to use, again, the same Scala model. So when we start this, it automatically starts the prop for us temporarily. It's called embedded prop, and runs the kind of battery of tests, giving us at the end result of all the tests, and it stops the prop. So we can essentially see the entire output of the test run. We can also see the summary of the test. It's a very extremely convenient command that you would use basically every time you change the model and you want to quickly retest the model. You can run this from IDE, but you can also run it from the NLPCraft CLI. Now, there are a couple of more useful commands that you would use to look at the log files for server and prop. Now we're back to our Windows environment, and if you type an info command, you can find the log locations for the prop and for the server. But you can also use tail prop and the tail server commands from NLPCraft CLI to look at the log files right from the CLI itself. So you can basically say tail prop, and it looks like 20 lines, but you can also change the number of lines to, let's say, 100, and look at the last 100 lines of log of a data prop. You can also do the same thing for the server. It's very convenient to kind of quickly look at the logs and see what's going on in the log. Another interesting capability of NLPCraft CLI is to execute AOS commands right from the NLPCraft CLI itself. Now, you can exit CLI without losing the context of a server or prop. If you look at right now, we have a server and a prop on. We can exit the CLI. It shows that basically the prop and the server is still running. And we can come back to CLI and still have our server and the prop on. But we can also run an OS commands right directly from the CLI if it's more convenient to us. Let's switch for the Ubuntu side of things. And basically any command that starts with a $sign will be interpreted as OS commands. So we can essentially run the ls commands. We can look at the Java version. It's very convenient to actually sometimes run Maven builds or any other kind of utility commands that you want to run from CLI without constantly exiting and entering back into the CLI. So the last thing I want to discuss and mention is essentially you can use NLPCraft CLI in your own scripts. So let's go ahead and exit from the CLI itself using the quit command, and we're back into the shell. So let's imagine we're trying to basically extract the access token for our REST APIs from sign-in REST call. So let's go ahead and use sign-in command, and it takes two parameters. One is email. We're going to use our default account. And if you run this command from a command line, it will actually give us a fairly fancy output with the logo, with ANSI coloring, and essentially giving us a whole HTTP request, a response rather back. So we can go ahead and start cleaning this up, because it's, if you want to extract this particular token in our own script, obviously parsing this output is kind of inconvenient. So there's a couple of commands that I didn't mention before we can use. One of them is no logo and no ANSI. They're actually used together most often. Both of these commands allow you to strip the logo output and strip out all the coloring that comes with the ANSI support. So if you run the same command, we now have a slightly better result. There's no more colors to deal with when we're parsing this output, and there's no more logo to kind of strip out. So we can go ahead, remove the essentially first two lines, get a little bit better results. We can also now use a GQ library or GQ utility to essentially get us the access token from this JSON response. And that's almost what we needed. Just in the last step, we can basically just remove double quotes, and here's our final results. So that's how easy you can use NLPCraft CLI in the command line mode in your own scripts to extract values from the JSON responses. So that's all for this quick video tutorial. I hope you'll find NLPCraft CLI an easy to use and effective tool when developing with NLPCraft. Thanks for watching.